Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
The red light's on, by the way.
Excellent. I love a red light. It means warning, by the way.
Unless you're in Amsterdam.
And what does it mean then?
Open for business.
The Degraded Podcast is brought to you by Soccer90.com. Shop Soccer90.com for all the latest arrivals, including FC Dallas gear, FIFA Women's World Cup, European Club gear. Get the new Marvel FC Dallas pre-match top, endless Captain America balls. They got everything. Third Degree listeners get 20% off when you order with the code Third Degree at checkout at Soccer90.com. Some exclusions may apply.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to another episode. This one is numerically numbered 217 of Third Degree, the podcast. Hello, I am Peter, just hanging out here virtually on the interwebs, first with my favorite guy with a big bushy beard on his face, Dan Crooke. Howdy, Dan.
Hello.
Hello, Dan. What you been
Hi.
up to lately?
Sweating. How about you?
Yeah? All your undercarriage parts all grody?
I don't want to talk about that.
Okay. All right. Well, I just, seems to be a hot topic these days in these parts.
I mean,
around
everything's
here.
a hot topic when the heat index is 115 every
Well,
day.
breaking news. Texas is hot in the summer, everybody. It's always been this way. It's never varied from this. This is not new.
But there's records.
Yeah, no, the record was in 1980 when I was 11 and a half years old. That is hot. So everybody just calm down with your this is too hot stuff. It's been this way forever. And your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, the amazing Buzz Carrick. Buzz?
I remember the summer of 1980. It was indeed horrific.
It was bitch hot is what it was.
Yeah, that's when people talk about Texas and hot, that's when I say that's the time where I actually was in things like 110, and experienced it myself. It was a really awful summer. Yep.
I remember standing outside at the end of it on the day it finally rained after however many days of drought we had that particular summer, and standing out and just dancing around in the rain. It was a marvelous day after all the misery that we had been through.
Yeah, it was a rough summer.
Of your life.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Dan?
Was it the happiest day of your life?
For an 11 and a half year old, yeah, it was pretty much the happiest day of my life. Because I think later that year in December, at the age of 12 for Christmas, I would have that difficult moment when when my parents opened a door to my Christmas present, which turned out to be a Huffy bike, not a Schwinn.
Oops.
And I had to feign excitement and glee while inside being just mortified over the fact that I was going to get run over hard by all my friends for having a Huffy bike and not a Schwinn.
Yeah, quite rightly.
I know. Well, my parents tried their best.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all we need to talk about 1980. This is a wonderful episode because since we last talked, our club has not played a game of soccer, which means they did not lose. And nobody else got hurt again. At least I'm hoping Buzz is going to tell us nobody got more hurt. We don't have any more hurters on the club, and maybe we get some good news. So here on the run sheet on the front, written in red crayon, it says, Jesus Ferreira is an all-star once again.
Yes, he is. Second year in a row. It's pretty well deserved. I think, the only surprise actually is that he was voted into the thing and into the starting lineup and wasn't in on some coach selection or something else like that. Just because the Dallas doesn't always get very many votes. I mean, there's been many times where we felt a player was deserving and they didn't get voted in. We weren't even sure that he would get voted in. And I felt pretty confident, going into the All-Star voting process that he would be the only one, despite the fact that the club had some campaigns and you can make cases for one or two other guys. There really was no way you were going to get somebody else other than him. So it's exciting probably for him to get that, opportunity. Even if you don't actually want to play in the game, it's still a cool recognition.
He gets to play on those cool games before the All-Star game, right?
Well, if he gets chosen
The
for the skills competition and stuff,
Yeah.
that'd be cool. Pepe did it once. I don't know if Jesus will do it or not, but it's
Jesus did it last year.
did he? Okay, great. Yeah, maybe they'll let somebody else do it again instead. Sometimes they try to rotate people in that, keep it fresh, but I'm sure he probably is happy to have the presumed bonus check that he gets for getting that. I mean, almost everybody has that kind of stuff written into their contract, so it doesn't stink. I'll tell you that.
And I think we all feel like we're in agreement that he's probably the only player on the team deserving of an all-star spot this season. Is there somebody else that I'm forgetting that might have deserved? Pause, maybe?
Martin Paz, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. That's it, Paz.
Pause? Oh, I thought I heard Dan say somebody's
He did. He said Martin Paz at the same time I said Martin
And then
Paz.
you paused for thought.
Yeah, it was a triple pause. Speaking of which, is this where we stop the podcast so Buzz can pimp his new Martin Paz t-shirt?
Yeah, the Paz Patrol shirt. That's I had fun with that one. It was something I felt would be sort of all audiences appropriate, and people would like it. And there's even kid versions of it, sizes and stuff. So if you like that, hopefully people will enjoy that shirt. He seemed to respond to it, and we've sold a couple of them. So
Do you
it's all in fun.
think when he saw that, giant question mark formed over his Dutch head?
Yeah, he probably had no idea what Paw Patrol was, but I put the video of the intro to the show, in replies, and he was tagged on there, so hopefully he saw it. It was super cool that he saw that we made a shirt for him, and liked that. Whether he gets the bid or not is a different question. But
Yeah, well, I think he's a little bit lonely because his girlfriend has been over in Europe quite extensively for the longest time, and he is starting to get rather irregular on Twitter about tweeting things. Like he was tweeting about the weather, and he goes to sports things. He was tweeting. I think he made himself a Dallas Cowboys jersey and tweeted that image out the other day. So I think he's a little lonely or doesn't have much going on outside of practice. So I am glad to see the result of that is that he's engaging with people online a little bit. That's a lot of fun.
he's been pretty good about it. He's been tweeting about after games, saying, not personal mea culpas, but, like the one time he did say I wasn't good enough, but there's other times he said, we're not good enough. We need to get better. So
I'm just hoping that the Dutch Third Degree fan club decides to make a Buzz Carrick Third Degree homage shirt in reference to some sort of Dutch kids cartoon or PSA character. That'd be funny. And then you could go, hey, that's really cool, and have no idea what they're talking about.
I don't think there's that many Dutch Third Degree fans, but I'm sure that all two of them will get together and do a shirt.
You think there's more? There's got to be more than two, Buzz.
We do not get very many listens out from outside the United States.
I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. I tend to believe that you are a worldwide phenomenon.
Oh, you're out. You're crazy. There's no way.
Don't you think, Dan?
I'm just sorry. I was lost in Martin Paz's Twitter feed talking about Pinterest and designing houses and
Yeah. Did you see that?
yeah. I'm just I'm surprised he has all this time. I mean, he is a big football manager player, and that can easily take up all 24 hours in the day.
Well, maybe that's why his girlfriend lives in Europe all the time, because
I
he's
think
playing
Dan's speaking from
FM all the
experience there.
Yeah. Well, there was a time and a day when Championship Manager, the previous version of that, almost ruined my marriage because I got so sucked into it in the late 90s. Oh,
you
my
would
gosh.
have been one of the several dozen.
Yep. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's amazing that they have that proud record. That,
There's probably a wall of photos in there somewhere in their lobby or something. This man got a divorce or lost his girlfriend or spouse or partner because he played too much Football Manager. All right, sorry, I digress. We go back to the All-Star conversation. So Ferreira is an All-Star. Maybe Martin Paz should have been in there. Is there any chance anybody else gets called up, or is all the special awardings been done?
They've done all that. The coaches' teams and the commissioners' awards has all been done. So there's not going to be anybody else from Dallas.
when they used to have it, when the day before the All-Star game, another 40 players would get picked to an extra roster, so they'd get contract bonuses.
Yeah, there's a very specific reason for that. It's because in the early days of the league, you had the Eastern versus the Western Conference. And then when the league wanted to go MLS team versus foreign team, like they're playing Arsenal this time, that eliminated half the amount of All-Star spots.
Well, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Like even when I started playing other teams, the day before the All-Star game, and it was purely a contract thing.
Right. That's what I just said.
Yeah, but what I'm saying,
when they started playing the new teams, they started playing European teams, it had eliminated half the All-Star spots. So the players' union said, that's wrong. You owe us 25 more roster spots. So they added and announced a whole other team of All-Stars that aren't in the game because of those contract obligations.
Oh, I thought you were saying that was what ended it, and I was like, no.
No, that's why that exists. It probably still does exist. I would imagine. I'm sure, unless they negotiated it out of the CBA.
At least stop doing the announcements if something like that does exist.
Yeah.
What is it, like MLS All-Star second team or not so All-Star team or almost All-Star team?
Blas Perez would get like the announcement every single year.
Okay, so congratulations to Jesus. I'm sure he's super excited about that, and we'll get to play. And who are they? Are they playing Arsenal? Yeah, that's right.
They are Arsenal. Yeah, and Declan Rice
and Kai Havertz.
Maybe. Yeah, Arsenal's added all kinds of players. Yeah.
Not my team. Okay, so let's move on. It says here on the run sheet, Jesus Ferreira versus Brandon Vazquez, parentheses requested.
Yeah, that came from...
We got a podcast request?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It came from somebody on Twitter.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Well, it seemed
we
like
should
a good
make
idea.
it a thing, Buzz. The podcast request questions.
People don't ever... people so rarely ask us to talk about a specific topic, and it seemed like a good one. Because it was, whenever Jesus plays for the national team, you get a whole bunch of all kinds of things from other different places.
You mean idiots?
Yeah, well, and one of them was this idea, which I think is an interesting idea to talk about, was this narrative that some people have that Jesus isn't a 9 and is not a good 9, and that Brandon Vazquez is a 9 and he's awesome and Jesus should be a midfielder. And I think there's some talking points in there that are worth discussing. So it's not like necessarily I want to say that those guys should be considered head-to-head, because you guys both know that squads are bigger than that, and there are players that fill specific roles, and the tactical decisions are made based on who you're playing. So really what it comes down to is basically to have a discussion. This person was asking, David Mercer's his name, was asking us to sort of have a discussion about this idea that Jesus might be a better midfielder or not, and then how that compares to Brandon Vazquez. So I pulled some numbers if you want me to go first, and then you guys can sort of maybe follow up on that if you want.
Okay.
So just look at the last 2 seasons of Major League Soccer is what I pulled, just to give us a pool of games, not just a couple of games for the national team. So just looking at the pool of when both players have been really good. And they're very close. The same 2 players are very, very close in almost every way. They both played 50 games, 50 and 51, and they've started, 48 and 46, whatever. Those are give or take the same. Vazquez has 22 goals in that time frame because he's down a little bit this year, and Jesus has got 28. So still, though, that's in the same ballpark. And then 10 assists to 8 assists, relatively the same. So this is the thing we talk about with Jesus, right? Is that he is a very clinical finisher and clinical goal scorer. And you can look at that and be demonstrated in things like shots to goals ratios. So, for example, Vazquez is 5.6 shots for every goal, and Jesus is 4.5. So that's, again, roughly the same, tiny bit better for Jesus. If you want to look at shots on target per goal, again, sort of very similar, 2.55 for Vazquez and 2.14 for Jesus. So you can see that Jesus is a tiny bit better in both of those things, but I'm going to go ahead and be fair and say they're roughly the same. So those categories mean that those 2 guys are just as prolific a goal scorer across the board. Where they differentiate is basically the sort of alternative stats on how they get things done. And the thing that you can come back to is what we always talk about Jesus, where he's a movement striker and a chaos-creating striker. A combiner. Really, it's this idea that he's a false 9 or an off striker, is what we say more often than not, which is this sort of 10-ish look as playing with a 9 most of the time, or if the other 9's missing, it's a false 9. So Jesus has a 95th percentile among strikers with shot creating actions. So he creates opportunities in chaos, and Vazquez is only 30%. It's basically almost double shot creating actions for Jesus. But going the other way, Brandon has much more of a higher rate and higher percentage of progressive receptions, which means he's higher up the field. He wins a higher percentage of much higher percentage of aerial duels. And so he is obviously quite clearly and very simply a big-bodied high striker. And Jesus is very obviously, very clearly an off striker or false nine. Yet they both are prolific in their scoring and finish at a very clinical rate. And so they're very comparable players in terms of production, but they're very different players in terms of how they go about their business. This is one of the reasons why people have sometimes talked about the idea of trying to get both those guys on the field at the same time for the national team. If you can play a two-striker system, it'll work really well. Now, the problem, of course, right now is that the national team plays a pretty rigid 4-3-3 most of the time. They're not looking to play a two-striker system. And so if you wanted to get both those guys on the field, you have to begin to get creative. But really what we know is that you're going to have a larger pool of players. In some games, one guy makes more sense than other games. Now, whether you feel your coaching decision is making the right choices about that or not is a different question. Now, if you think Jesus should be a midfielder, I think that's where it all falls apart, because his best characteristic is the clinical finishing. And he's a decent passer, but he's not a very good progressive dribbler, for example. He doesn't do like a Pulisic or a Reina, or in our local club here case, Alan Velasquez, where they pick up the ball and dribble at people. He can burst by people, but he's not this nifty dribbler. He's a quick pass, quick touch, good at line breaking, those kinds of things. But that doesn't say he's making him a midfielder. You just watch the way he plays and the way compared him to Paxton or compared him to Velasquez, and you can easily see what the difference is. So that's my overall macro take on this question.
Buzz, I think you summed it up very nicely. I don't have any really hot sports opinions about this. I think we, at least between the three of us and people that have listened to this podcast for a long time, we all have a pretty solid sense of what Jesus is and what his strengths and weaknesses are. And it would be great to see them both on the field at the same time. And it did make me wonder if the U.S. was to play the formation they played against Canada and Jamaica, kind of that 4-2-3-1 they were playing, with Jesus playing in the role that Gio played in those games, what would that look like? And I even wonder that sometimes if Dallas could go out and get themselves a really kick-ass, more Brandon Vazquez style 9, could Jesus fall back more into a midfield role and play that role for Dallas?
Well, the system, if you really, really feel like you need him to be a midfielder, and you really, really feel like you need the 4-3-3, depending on which version of it you want, you rotate that midfield. If you make him a really high midfielder, like FC Dallas did with Siki and Sebeling before Siki got hurt, where really they were almost running Siki like a second false 9, where he and Jesus were taking turns going in and out of the box kind of thing. And they were both designed to be moving forward and creating the same sort of chaos. You could do that kind of thing. You could even do it with Vazquez if you had him as the high 9 and Jesus. If you do want to do a 4-2-3-1, which is, as we say, a version of a 4-3-3, then you really would have to give Jesus a lot of freedom, because what you don't want him to do is come back and be an 8 and sit there alongside the 6 and play those roles that like a West and Musa do in the current national team. You really would have to change the tactic. You would have to be a much freer role. But even if you did it the way, you can't expect him to do it the way Gio Reyna does it, because Gio Reyna, like Pulisic, picks the ball up and runs at people, whereas Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus is a combiner and a ticky-tacky player, and he runs into those gaps, but he doesn't do it with the ball. He's not a dribbler with the ball, so it would look very different.
Yeah.
Which brings me back again to the idea that it's just about tactics. Brandon Vazquez is a great big-bodied, physical, high striker. If you want that particular role, for whatever reason you're matching up against a team, he is great for that specific role. He's the guy that can put them back down. He can nod the balls off to guys that are running at these gaps. Right. This is why people think it would be great if you could play him with Jesus doing that old school Jason Christ, Maradona, right under that big striker kind of role. That's where Jesus really flourishes, is that movement just around the center backs, just maybe underneath the center backs even, at the top of zone 14, maybe those late runs into the box, that crashing at the back post, those are his excel moments. It's not to say that either one of them is a better or worse player. I think they're both really good.
They're just different players.
They're different. They're very, very different players and styles. That doesn't mean Jesus is a midfielder, just as there are guys that, it's not the same position. I mean, he could do it, but it's like you've got other guys that are better at that. It's like, don't try and make him something he's not. If it's the right fit to play him, then play him. If it's not the right fit to play him, then don't. I mean, it's pretty simple. Like national teams have pools of 200 players at their disposal. There's never going to be a locked in 11.
No, but I do think I understand why people get frustrated with the selection, because there appears to be. I understand why people get frustrated by player selection. I also understand that people take the this particular tournament, the Gold Cup. Everybody takes it seriously at different levels. I in my mind, it's an opportunity to try out new combinations of younger players that don't normally get an opportunity. But I do think it's an interesting idea. Why can't they figure out how to get them both on the field at the same time? And by the way, I thought Jesus had a fantastic game against Jamaica. He really got short shrifted by some terrible finishing. I thought he was a good connector. I thought he created a lot of several really good chances for the team, for other people to finish, and they failed for him. But let's all not forget, it was Jesus that played the ball in that Vazquez eventually scored to tie the game.
Yeah, I think that the idea that he could be a connector is what get people fired up to make him a midfielder or whatever. And I think really you would have to, as you suggested, do that midfield rotation where he would be that higher player, but then give him some freedom. It would mean your wings would have to come a little bit deeper and do a little more defensive work. But if you gave him almost like a 4-4-1-1 kind of look, that in a modern system, your wings are pretty high. There's not a whole lot of difference between those two shapes. That underneath probably could work pretty well, particularly against teams who aren't making you sit back in a low block. Now, if you're against a team that's pushing you way back, like I don't know that it would work in the World Cup against the Dutch, but like playing the Guatemala or a Guadeloupe, these may be some things that can work really well to try these other things.
Yeah, Buzz, you're so smart and educated and understanding of all the tactics and minutia of all this stuff. I think when you hear somebody say maybe Ferreira should be a midfielder, you get bogged down into all of the how that actually happens. And I just think the average fan thinks, why can't we get these two guys on the field at the same time and because, by the way, I don't know if you noticed it during the Jamaica game, Jesus was spending an awful lot of time way back in the United States half of the field running around in midfield. So and you and I and Dan see him do that all the time, right? And again, I just assume that's Jesus doing Jesus things and drives the coach nuts. But if you're somebody that doesn't see Jesus play very often, I can see why somebody just says, why isn't he just not playing in the midfield?
Yeah, one of the things you can do, and I appreciate those comments, by the way, and one of the things you can do in the midfield is play sort of more like Philly, which is where they run that, what a lot of people might call a narrow diamond, or basically they flip their front line. So they have two guys and then a guy underneath. Or you see these teams that play these box midfields now where they basically have two playmakers that are chunking in and out. I mean, there's lots of modern tactical ways you could try and get those guys on the field at the same time. It's just that I just hate it when I see people talking about him like he's Weston McKennie or Paxton. It's like it's not even remotely that same kind of
right.
player.
No, and I completely agree, and I think that's just a byproduct of somebody that doesn't really know him as a player. And I probably say things about other players that I don't know very well, and I'm sure if somebody goes, why does that guy on that podcast or radio show say it? It's like, because I just don't watch that guy very often,
Well, Dan, probably being an England fan, is probably seeing a whole lot more of this kind of like there's a lot of good guys for one or two positions, and how do you get some of them on the field at the same time? It's a tough question.
I mean, that was the whole Lampard and Gerrard thing for 10 years?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good comparison.
Yeah, I don't think that Brandon or Jesus is like the answer at 9 necessarily, not at this point, I definitely don't think this is not a case where like one or those two or the other guys should be like the starter for the rest of the Gold Cup. I honestly think the answer is that they're both equally valid, and that you're going to see both of them. There's something to be said for the value of having one guy start and the other guy come in later, and bringing that change, whichever one it is, the other guy brings a change and can really confuse a team as they're tiring later in games. So there's a versatility and a value to both of those guys. And I just push back. But it's like when people want to make Paxton a 6 because he puts in defensive effort. That doesn't mean he's a 6, man.
No, but I do think I mean, look, as a fan of the national team and looking at the roster and the players they have, I would like to see more Ferreira and Vazquez on the field at the same time, and I would invite the coaching staff to figure out how to best get those two guys, because I think Vazquez is a fantastic finisher, and I think Ferreira is a good creator. And we've talked about this on this pod before. I don't think Jesus is a very good 9 in that traditional sense. That's not my favorite thing to watch him do. And I think the only reason why we see it so much is just because Dallas just doesn't have somebody else to play that position.
Well, in old school Dallas terms, he's Jason Christ.
Yes.
Or if you go back and old enough in a U.S. team, he's Joe Max Moore, right? He's that old off-striker role, the tweener role, which is why he's a little bit of a facilitator. But it's the same thing. Like if you try and take Jason and put him way back in midfield, you lose all the things that made Jason great. It's the same thing with Jesus. If you take him back in the midfield, he needs to be up there within range of the box.
If he'll stay up there.
If he'll stay up there, yeah. That's a whole different thing. And Jesus is 2 years younger too, but that doesn't really matter in this conversation. We're talking about which choices would you make with him in the game. And honestly, with Morris hurt, right? Isn't Jordan Morris potentially out for this game?
I think he's out, yeah.
Yeah, maybe there's some ways that they might look at.
I think he's out for the tournament, actually. I think they're trying to figure out who to replace him.
I know it's not really good. But, this is a different kind of roster. And missing him now, it's like, okay, maybe we need to make some alternative kind of ideas about this team. And maybe there will be some ways. Because, Zendejas looked pretty decent, but Sonora did not. So maybe there's some alterations that have to happen across the field that'll mean different things. So it's a fascinating question. And I actually love to talk about these kind of topics because – there's reasons why both are valid and both of them are really good. And as long as you don't try and put Jesus back there next to Tyler Adams, I'll be fine. Yeah.
Hey, Dan, were you a Lampard and or Gerrard fan? Did you choose one over? Did you pledge allegiance to one over the other?
No. No, I mean, I definitely always kind of wondered if you could put Gerrard in underneath Lampard, but it was just good to watch two high quality players in one position group.
It was
and I know you don't watch the national team as much as maybe some of us who are actually
American,
but I think Dan's American now.
You know what I
mean. Do you have a take on this Jesus 9 thing? Do you think he's a chance he could be a good midfielder?
I think, like you said, it kind of takes away the best parts of his game. His urgency to get forward with those progressive runs and those progressive passes is kind of what helps him link up. And I think you would kind of hamstring him slightly to almost put that restriction on him. Okay, you're a midfielder, you're going to get up to like zone 14 and then you're just going to stop. That's not his game.
Well, we're recording this on Wednesday, so we have obviously later on this evening is the next U.S. game against St. Kitts and Nevis, and so we'll find out. Maybe Jesus. I'm assuming Jesus is going to play again tonight. Who knows? I have no idea what they've got planned.
I'd like to see Brian Reynolds go on the field. That'd be nice for us.
It's his birthday.
It is his birthday, yeah. How cool would that be?
Is he like 12 today or something? How old is Brian now?
Gosh.
Is he 20-something?
Yeah.
20,
Is he 20 yet?
I'm Googling really fast. He's actually 22.
So,
wow. Time flies.
Time to retire.
As of today, yeah. He's a 2001 baby.
All right. Very good. Well, happy birthday to Big Brian. And
Big Bad Brian.
Oh, excuse me, Big Bad Brian. I hope.
Yeah,
BBB. I hope he gets to play tonight. Okay, so here we are. We also, since we started recording this, have seen the official word that Tata Martino is coming in to coach Inter Miami. We know that the Inter Miami machine is getting built and constructed as we speak, and there's all sorts of player signings. And I know I'm starting to get the sense within Buzz, your Discord, and other Dallas socials that the fan base is getting a little anxious. Do you portend that Dallas is going to go out and make any other changes?
Well, I talked to Coach Nico Stevens about that today, and he says that they have the ability to add another player or two. I think it's pretty clear that they're still looking. He did double down on this take that he's had for some time now, which is we're not going to do it just to do it. It's like if we don't find the right player, then we'll wait. They're relatively happy, I think, with their roster for this season. Granted, I think that the distinction has to be made that when it's healthy. I think this idea that they've pressed hard on, that it takes time to change the roster, to process and all that stuff. They're not going to look to just willy-nilly make a move just to make a move, but they are still actively looking. And that was discussion after the fact that they've already brought in this other player, Eugene Ansa. So he's talking about one or two more players. So they do have their fingers out there. They are looking. I don't think that they'll vary deeply from the plan, which is what, from the beginning of the year, talking about potentially a center back. It's just not going to be anything revolutionary. They have too much money tied up in too many players already that
aren't doing squat.
Yeah, Paul Areola and Leggett and Jesus, of course, has got a lot of money in him and a lot of money in Alan Velasco. So they've sort of got they do have the ability to get a DP, but I don't think by making Paul, because right now Paul Areola technically fills that last DP spot. They just don't. What they would do is execute a buy down on him, and then he would not be a DP. So they could, if they really felt like they needed to, go out and get somebody. But I think they're still missing the Tam Gam that they need. They need the sell on from Pepe to come in. They need potentially something with Che to come in, or whoever else they might possibly move out. So I don't expect massive, humongous, like, oh my God, or shaking Messi kind of move this summer.
Yeah, I do wonder, and because I think we all know that Clark Hunt runs this thing in a very balance the books kind of way, and let's all just recognize that the one time they went out and spent a lot of money is shortly after making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so the question I'm thinking about is, do you think they had to greatly alter their plans? They had something planned and in place to go make a significant purchase, but the fact that Justin Che didn't or hasn't yet been sold for any kind of money caused them to pivot and go someplace else.
I think that's one of the reasons why they had to wait to this summer, was to accumulate some more of that stuff. But they've had enough things happen, I think, that they can since we're now seeing Pepe on the verge of moving on, we've now seen possibly maybe Che will move on or not. I think there won't be a problem if they need to pull the trigger. They'll be able to come up with to get it done. But they probably can't do that. That's where I think they're going to be limited in the caliber of what they can do. I think they'll have enough wherewithal to get that one TAM kind of signing, which is a, under $1 million kind of signing, something in the neighborhood of your hopefully a better skill set, but in the neighborhood of a Facundo or Quignon or a Jose Martinez. That $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 player. Hopefully, that can be a player that can be of a good enough caliber to make good. What I don't think you're going to see is the kind of third DP of $1 million price because then you also need to do something with Areola. So then there's like a double component, and then that's much more expensive. They don't have that kind of wherewithal right now. I think come next winter, when they make whatever the next phase of their roster build is, I think you'll see they'll have more flexibility, and then they will be able to do that. So I just can't imagine it's now. And I think even from the beginning of the year, it never was going to be now that they were going to do that DP level kind of move. I think that's why they've left Areola as that DP, because that reduces his cap number and all that kind of stuff, and it gets them these other things happen to your roster when you have that third DP filled. Because this team's carried more than 3 DPs for, technically speaking, for a decade now. They always have 6, 7, 8 guys that technically would qualify for that. They just buy them down and reduce them with that TAM GAM kind of stuff, that funny money. It's all semantics, and this is the complication of rosters that's kind of stupid. in this league. But the short version of what I just said was basically like, don't expect a big splash. Expect, a one solid piece, maybe, if they can find it. It's not easy to find because left center backs, if that's still the play, and I think it is, are very difficult to find.
Yeah, if you're expecting a big purchase, you haven't been paying attention to the last 28 years.
No.
And related to that, Buzz, is the fact that we've joked for quite some time that Dallas, despite the results, somehow inevitably always seem to be in fourth place. But lo and behold, since we last spoke, Dallas is now down into seventh place. They're 4 points away from dropping out of the playoff spots. And it does now start to feel like, with the fact that when you name kind of the five main attacking players between Ferreira and Velasco and Areola and Leggett, you're not getting any production out of any of those guys other than Jesus. The wheels have started to come a little loose and wobbly on this thing a little bit, and I'm wondering, based on going to training today, have you had a conversation with Coach about that and what his particular vibe is about the rest of the season?
Well, I'll tell you, funny enough, it turns out that in terms of how you schedule games and count games, the St. Louis game, that was the win a couple of weeks ago, doesn't count as a couple of weeks ago. It actually counts way back when it actually started. So technically, Dallas is on a 4-game losing streak, which I believe is the franchise record. So they're going into this game with a chance to break the franchise record for consecutive losses, I believe, at 5, if they don't manage to win. And the problem, of course, is you're playing LAFC, and the two teams that are near you in the standings, underneath you in the standings, are Austin and Vancouver. Both play teams that are way behind you in the standings. So there's a legitimate, although I think they're on the road, so there's a legitimate chance that Dallas could come out of this next weekend's games and be out of the playoffs. The vibe around the team and the vibe around the coaching staff from being out there today was definitely like a resignation that they know that the hand they've been dealt, the unfortunateness of all these injuries coming at one time has really handcuffed them considerably. It's not just that some of them are all at the same position. It's that it all happened at once. And it's all guys that you expected to be reliable and get paid quite a bit of money and are expected to score goals for you. And then on top of that, Jesus being gone. So they know it's just a really awful confluence. They're trying to remain pretty positive and trying to go out the game tactically and make some decisions about how they think they can get a result. They are playing for results. They're not playing for fun, and they know it. So I don't think anyone's worried for a job or anything, but I definitely think that they know that they got some uphill sledding ahead of them. And you can see from some of the things they were doing in training that they understand that. Like, for example, Sam Junka played wing throughout the whole training session today and not left back. They brought up Tyshawn Rose from North Texas to play left back in training. So just as an example of how Junka's had to play wing a whole lot lately, and probably will have to again in this game, whether it be starter or off the bench. I wouldn't expect him to start, but off the bench, so it's a tough spot they're in, and they know it is, and I think they're trying to figure out how to get a result against a team that's usually better than you.
Well, not to dogpile on the stat that you threw out. Not only are they on a 4-game losing streak, they're winless in their last 6. Because if you remove the St. Louis game, the last time they actually won a game in sequence was the Vancouver game, way back when, I think at the beginning of May. So it's been quite a while. You did catch me off guard by that stat. So you're saying the record losing streak for Dallas in 27 years is 4? Really?
I believe that they're tied. This is what I was talking to somebody at the PR office about it, that they're currently tied at 4 straight losses, because you get ties and you play home games. It's rarely do you piece together long losing streaks. And this franchise has been relatively good. People like to trash it, but it's like we joke all the time. They're better than you think. They've been relatively good most years. And so what I was told today was that they're currently tied on 4 consecutive losses for the franchise record, and they'll break the record if they lose. Now, double check me when the notes come out, because it was just an off-cuff conversation. But
right.
Yeah, it's for whether it is the record or not, it's in the conversation, and that's what matters. It's like, this is definitely one of the worst streaks this club's ever had, and it's not anyone's fault. It's the nature of this league that the rosters are shallow. Could they have done a better job? And I even asked Coach if he regretted going with a little more shallow roster. And he basically said not really. It's because it was just this absolute confluence of nuts injuries, many in the same position and the same talent load, that just derailed you in a way it was almost unforeseeable. But then again, that's why you run deeper rosters, for insurance.
Yeah, well. All right, yeah, because, to your point, Buzz, they got the game again on Saturday against LAFC, then the July 4th game just a few days later against DC, and then on the road at a place they never play well, Colorado, and then a road game to Seattle, and then and maybe by the time you get Jesus back, and who knows how worn out he's going to be by then, a road game to Philadelphia.
Yeah, well, this is what happens, right? I mean, there had been some, and late in the Lucci season, we had the same thing. We were looking at how brutal these schedules are. It's like, you got to win these games, man. Yeah. It's like this. You're playing in a league of parity. Like, everybody is pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
So every week there aren't for teams like FC Dallas in particular, and I would say for anybody in this league, even LAFC in Seattle they don't have these games where it's like Man City versus Southampton, and they can rotate the whole team. You don't have those kinds of moments in this league. Every weekend, every game is competitive. You can lose to anybody all the time.
Yeah. And
so, it's a grind. It's going to be a grind, and when we get down to the health stuff later, there's some positive news, but it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, it is funny because if you really, just to drive your point home, after the Philly game, home game Atlanta, on the road St. Louis. I'm not Atlanta, excuse me. Home game to Austin, on the road to St. Louis, home game Atlanta, home game Seattle, on the road Salt Lake, Columbus, at Houston, and then you finish the season with Colorado, San Jose, and at the Galaxy.
Yeah, it's not till October that you get any kind of break.
Isn't that crazy?
And that's only because LA is terrible and Colorado is terrible. San Jose is decent. So, yeah, it's not easy, man.
It's built to be driven by parity, and that certainly is the case.
Well, I didn't ask him about Interliga, but I can't imagine that they're going to go full boat on Interliga.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
I'm sorry, not Interliga.
Leagues Cup.
Leagues Cup.
Yeah.
Now, I know that the club's trumpeting this whole, like, you might get to see Messi thing, but man, if it's one thing they don't need is more games right now, right? I mean, they need games off. They need a break to get some guys healthy. So,
yeah, we should I'd probably talk about that for a second, because in your Discord, that was certainly a hot topic, which was the email that went out to season ticket holders, essentially pointing a giant gun at everybody saying, hey, there's this weird confluence of alignment of stars where Inter Miami may have to come to town and play Dallas, and by the way, Messi may be playing with them. So if you want to make sure that you have seats for that game, you got to do X, Y, and Z. And I get that it was probably built on the fact that they don't have a ton of control over how that is sold or scheduled. But once again, it's one of those deals where we look at how this club communicates to its fan base, its hardest core fans, and you're like, could you not have thought about a different way of saying that, or
the tone
of it, or the way you present it, and not make it sound like you're holding them hostage?
Yeah, I kind of understand it in the sense of like the way the club functions, where it's like, if there's going to be this third game, they don't want to have it be out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden you're having to try and get, I want my seat, but it's the Messi game, So it's like I kind of get the math of what they are doing, and the logistics of what they're doing. But that email was atrocious, and it was horribly worded, and like all the season ticket holders that I know were almost offended by it, So it's like, it's sometimes this club will shoot itself in the foot, It's just some bad messaging, and hopefully they can clean it up some.
No, I have season ticket holder friends that are really even keeled about all this stuff. They're not in the Discord. They go to the games. They've been season ticket holders for a really long time, but they never get too upset or bothered by too much. But even they thought that particular email was pretty ridiculous.
Yeah,
and they're like, yeah, I mean. And again, look, if your business is selling tickets, you've got to figure out a way to maximize the opportunity, which is Messi coming to town. And I get that. But for all the advancements
Yeah.
this club has made in working with the fan base, that is still definitely a soft spot in the skull.
Yeah, I don't know that they ran that email up the right chain of command and got somebody that's a better writer involved. When you're doing that kind of rollout, maybe get some PR people involved or something.
Yeah, because what was the insistence was, if you want tickets, you had to buy all. You had to buy the potential for. You had to buy all the Leagues Cup's games tickets in advance, and you had to go ahead and re-up for 2024. Is that what the demand was? The requirement?
I think it's if you wanted to have your seat for the Messi game, the hypothetical Messi game, you had to buy the whole thing
up front. You had to pay for it up front.
Yeah,
and you had you had to re-up for 2024 your season tickets. I thought too, wasn't it?
Possibly. I didn't pay that close of attention to the details because I wasn't going to buy it
Uh,
because I'm not going to be here.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
No, but I just remember that the demanding of it was the part that I know people seem to get upset about. Yeah, I think you're right about the re-upping thing. I don't.
It's funny. Because this is funny because on the radio show last weekend, Tyler was filling in for Andy, and he and I had this whole conversation about this idea of Messi coming to town. And I asked him, I said, how much money? I mean, Tyler, he's not a season ticket holder. And I asked him how much he'd pay to see Messi play Dallas in a meaningful game. And we had this back and forth about what the value of that was. And I think his limit was like $300. And I had to admit that
Jesus, that's a lot.
What happened there?
Oh, so Jesus, that's a lot.
Well, then hold on to your hat, because I said on the show that I don't know what my cap is, because I'm not a season ticket holder. I don't have a media pass. If I'm the idea of getting to see the world's greatest player play my team, like this is the team that I consider nearest and dearest to my heart in our home stadium. Like the value of that to me and a good seat is astronomical. And I'm embarrassed to admit the amount of money I'd be willing to pay to see that game.
Yeah, everyone's got their own different valuation of it. I think some of the misunderstanding is basically that FC Dallas is lumping the whole Leagues Cup into one bit. And so you have to buy every ticket all the way to the final. So you're looking at like 6 or 7 tickets that you have to buy. And you have to put all the money down at once, if you want your seat. Otherwise, you're going to be...
Yeah, but you get that money back, though, if it doesn't happen, right?
I mean, I would assume that you do. Or maybe that's the thing. Is like, we'll apply that money to next season. Maybe that's what the season thing is coming in. But so looking at the email, basically, the bid is like you have to be renewed for 2024 if you want to do this. That's the part. It doesn't say that you have to renew now if you want that. It's like if you're not already renewed, basically. And the knockout games aren't played. If these cup games aren't played, then your money will roll over to 2024. So basically, that's they're saying if you want the to be able to get the Messi game, you have to buy every Leagues Cup game through potentially the championship, which is like 5 knockout rounds.
Okay.
So you're looking at a couple $100 probably, depending on where your seat is, right?
Right.
And you're not going to get your money back. We're going to roll your the money over to 2024 because in order to do this, you have to already be a member. So I think the idea is that there's not going to be hardly any, if this does go forward and there is a Messi game, you're not looking at like a general public sale. It's like everything's going to go to, I don't know what, but it says in here there's not going to be a public sale of these tickets.
I'm sure I'm sure an FC Dallas salesperson's listening to this punching their dashboard because we're butchering it, but in all the details. My point being is, Buzz, is that for all the money they're asking you to pay for an imaginary potential game, my reality is if in fact that game was going to happen, I would be willing to spend an assload of money to make sure that I'm going to be in that stadium to see Messi play Dallas in a meaningful game. That's all. I just I don't know how anybody wouldn't. I mean,
Were you able to define the total for you? Do you have like a specific number, or is it like just?
Oh, I'm not. Well, I don't want to say the number out loud because then somebody with a ticket will try to get me to pay that for it. But I've spent a lot of money on tickets before in my past to go see things that I really wanted to go see, either concert wise or sporting event wise. And to be able to, I mean, guys, it's Lionel Messi playing it's not a friendly, it's not an exhibition. It's a game that means something. And he's playing in Toyota Stadium against Dallas. Like, that to me, the value of that is off the charts.
Yeah, I guess I'm different then. I don't really.
That doesn't ring your bell the same way?
I think it'll be on TV. So, I mean, I'm going to be out of state anyway, but, I think it's phenomenal that Messi's coming to this league, but like seeing him play Dallas
in person
doesn't. I mean, I'm assuming that over the next 2 or 3 years, I'll get a chance to see him in person. I was much more moved by him winning the World Cup with Argentina.
I would make the argument there's a really high chance you may never get to see him play in Dallas if he doesn't play. If this game doesn't happen, because it's unlikely that they'll get scheduled a home game in Dallas against Miami by the time he's done in the 2.5 years he's contracted to play for Miami.
Yeah. You might be right. I guess it just doesn't bother me that much. I don't put that big of a stock in seeing it in person versus seeing it on TV.
Huh.
TV's pretty good. I like to go in person because I like to watch Division I soccer in person.
Yeah.
But I don't have those stronger feelings about particular matchups, or games, I would put a lot more value in trying to go see FC Dallas win an MLS Cup than I would them play Messi.
Sure, yes. And I agree. And the amount of money I'd pay to be at an MLS Cup game that Dallas was playing in, again, off the charts. But Messi is such a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I mean, so maybe Dallas win an MLS Cup game.
Yeah.
And I've already had that one in Toronto.
Well, it's from your reaction. It sounds like they were perfectly smart to do it the way they're doing it.
Well, you mean the club, the way they've rolled out the plan? The plan isn't the problem. It's it's how they explained it to you. It literally felt like, hey, we're going to point this money gun at your head, and unless you do this, and this, you're just going to miss out on this huge opportunity. Now, as somebody like me, I'm not a season ticket holder. I don't know so I guess the question is, since Peter's not a season ticket holder, and let's say the magic confluence and happens and the stars align and Inter Miami is coming to play Dallas in Leagues Cup in Toyota Stadium, how do I get a ticket to that game? Do I have to go buy somebody's season ticket for an exorbitant price?
Yeah, I don't think you're getting one aftermarket.
Well, no, it'll probably have to be. I don't think they're going to do single game seats, are they?
I don't. That's what it sounds like in the email. I don't want to speak for them, but that's what it sounds like. You're going to be on the aftermarket.
Here's the thing. Do you remember when they dropped the capacity and they were convinced they would never have to sell a single game ticket all season because everything would be sold out?
No,
and
I don't.
Sure enough, it wasn't.
Right.
I mean, they always get ahead of themselves and say, "Oh, we're going to sell out," and they don't. And the clubs put a great amount of sellouts together through a lot of World Cup sales, through a lot of single game sales, but not through people locking into season tickets.
Yeah, I still think that's, with all the advancements they've made in the last season and a half with attendance, I am interested in knowing what the increase in the number of season ticket sales they've made over the same amount of time. Like, is this increase in attendance based on walk-up? Is it group sales? Is it non-traditional? Is it season tickets? I don't know. Do you guys know?
I would assume it's all those things that, just the percentage of everything has gone up.
Sure, but is it equitable across the board, or have they had a significant increase in season ticket? Because we all know that's the real prize. That's the touchdown, not the field goal.
Yeah,
to use a terrible
they have
analogy.
Just the single sale tickets. I would be guessing. I honestly have no idea.
Yeah,
I just see the impact in the stands, and I know something's happening. I would assume it was relatively equitable across everything.
Yeah, all I know is there's some people listening to this pod that are immediately saying, all right, if this game happens, the first person I'm calling is Peter and holding him hostage for however much money he wants to give me for my ticket to the game.
You now set the bar at a high price for whenever you're trying to get a ticket.
I screwed myself.
I'd give you mine if I had one, but
I see, Buzz, I'm blown away that you wouldn't want to make the best effort possible to go be there for that momentous occasion. I'm not criticizing you. I'm just surprised because you spend the money to have season tickets because of that particular value to you, and I don't. So it's weird how it's reversed for this one particular thing. Although I probably end up spending 4x what you spend on an entire season of tickets to go watch one game.
Yeah, well, I'm more interested in the FC Dallas as a collective whole, the whole thing, the whole season.
Yeah.
I'm not interested necessarily in one particular. I mean, I do enjoy every game, but there aren't games on the schedule where I go, ooh, LA Galaxy's coming to town. I'm going to go see Beckham. I don't care. I mean, I'm here for the FC Dallas. I'm not the other team. So Messi doesn't move listen, I think Messi's the greatest player of all time, but I've seen Messi play.
See, I've never seen him play.
Well, not in person, but I've watched him on TV for 15 years, and seeing him in person makes no difference to me. It doesn't.
See, that really See, I think if there was ever a person that I know that would have a run with the opinion of until you see a player in person, you really don't know what they're capable of, it would be you.
What I usually say about that is you need to stand on the sideline like a foot from the field and see how fast they are. But I know that, so it's like. I understand why other people get excited about it, and I would understand the idea of the value people would place on, and I understand your value you place on this. I understand the value of people that would pay $25,000 for a World Cup final ticket, or $100,000 or $200,000 or whatever it is. I get it. I don't personally feel that way.
Right. Well, just for the record, so anybody is writing down a plan to contact me, no, I'm not willing to spend 5 digits to go see Messi at Toyota Stadium. I do have there's a price, but it isn't that kind of price.
Well, every once in a while you hear crazy stories about some dude that paid, ridiculous amounts of money for this, that, or the other thing.
Right.
And I certainly would enjoy watching Messi play against FC Dallas, but it's not something I would pay extra money for. Not like that kind of extra money. I might be like $100 maybe, but that's
all right. Well, that's a lot of talk about something that is almost certainly never going to happen. So,
that may get cut down.
There you go. All right. So you did go to training today, Buzz. You got to talk to people. You got to see things, and you even promoted in a tease on the socials earlier today that you had some news about particular players. So please go forth with your training report.
Well. Before I do the ones that I was teasing in the video, what I will tell you is that Coach Nico Estevez clarified for me that Dante Sealy cannot be added to the team until the transfer window opens July 5th, which I was surprised to find out because I assumed that he was already an FC Dallas player, so that the minute he showed up after his contract, his loan ended, which is the 31st, that he'd be able to be right in the lineup, and that's not the case. It has to do with the fact that he wasn't. Since his loan was 3 years long, he was never on the roster basically for this season at all. So they basically have to, because they had no right of recall, right? So he was never on the roster. So they have to wait for the window to add him, which is kind of weird. So he's here, Dante Sealy, and he is participating and actively trying to win a spot. And Coach said that he has to decide what he wants to do, be here or try to go somewhere else or whatever. Justin Shea is not here. Coach says Justin Shea does not want to be here. He wants to be in Europe.
The coach actually has said this out loud.
Well, what he said to me, I said, and we're not going to see Justin say, he said, no, Justin wants to be in Europe. And I was like, okay. So you're not going to see Justin Shea unless something goes sideways big time.
Yeah.
So Justin's not. Dante's here working hard, trying to give himself options. Justin Shea's not doing that. So it doesn't mean we won't see Justin Shea at some point, but it means that he absolutely does not
We're never seeing him
want
again.
to be back here. He wants to be in Europe.
Yeah.
So
if we ever see Justin Shea play for Dallas, it'll be when he's 36.
Yeah, I don't think you'll ever see him play again.
And by the way, that means Dante Sealy's, if in fact we were to potentially see him return in a Dallas shirt, his first game will be at altitude against Colorado. Poor kid.
Yeah, well, I doubt he would walk in on July 5th and be part of the mix, but he is potentially possible in addition come July 5th.
Okay.
All right. So the good news part is that there are 2 players returned to training today. One of them they both went the whole day. And one of them, it was their first day. And those 2 players are Paxton Pomykal and Siki and Sebeling.
Whoa.
So both of those players will be questionable this weekend, pending going through the week without getting hurt. That means that both of them probably almost certainly will be on the bench available for selection based on what I saw. They both looked fine. They both came through training, and they should be available if they clear the rest of the week without a setback. So now Coach, of course, did say that they want to be careful with those guys, and you're not going to see them thrown on immediately. And I wouldn't shock me as normal that he makes them come off the bench for this first game, and they don't want to. They're more interested in the long term than the short term, even though they're bleeding bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Sebastian Lletget, however, played last week. I expect him to start. Coach said that they want to get 60 minutes out of him. So that's a player that, to me, sounds like will be starting. He looked pretty good today in training, so that's good. That provides you an actual 8. Going from 0 8s to 1 8 is good. So that gives you options in midfield with what you're going to do. Paul Areola, he said they're targeting the Seattle game, which is amazing to me. That's the 15th.
Good Lord.
So, yeah, you're still looking. And Paul was out.
That's
doing
4
rehab
games
work
from
today.
now.
Yeah.
When did he get hurt?
Oh, I don't remember. Dan, do you remember when he got hurt?
May 13th.
Which was...
Yeah, so it'll be over a month.
Was this,
2 months.
Was that the St. Louis? No, the Portland game.
Austin.
Oh, the 22nd. Okay.
Yeah, so
that
that's the current target is the Seattle game, which is the 15th. And it probably, of course, that would be off the bench, and that's if all goes well. And he was doing some pretty aggressive rehabbing on the side, putting on a good sweat. But
wait, hold on a sec. You said
yeah.
May the 14th. So he's been out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games already. 9, 10, 11. That'll be 11 games out of a 30-something game season. That's a third of the season he will have missed.
Yeah, it happens.
Boy, that sucks. All right.
Yep. And then no sign at all of Jimenez or Imatuamasi, so I don't have any information about them. But not even out doing whatever on the side. So
have we ever decided yet that we can officially call the trade of Cervania for Jimenez a total bust yet?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends on what he does the rest of the year, but it's certainly not looking super positive.
Well, you could have absolutely used Brandon during this stretch of time with the injury situation.
Yeah. That's certainly true. Yeah, I mean, you can't.
I mean, you've gotten a bowl full of nothing out of Jimenez, and you've had an injury situation where you absolutely could have used him. That, to me, at least at this point, unless something dramatically changes, is a total bust.
Yeah, that's a little bit, hindsight. I don't think that's really fair. I don't. The trade certainly has not benefited Dallas. I think that's perfectly fair to say that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that. At the time, Brandon was way down on the bench and not even remotely close to playing. So it's like, they needed a striker. So I don't blame them at all.
Come on, Buzz. Let me throw a bomb or two.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good take. I'll give you that. I'm not going to be too upset about the deal. Even if it pans out that Jimenez does nothing, the calculation at the time still made sense to me.
Okay.
It's hard to blast somebody for that kind of calculation.
All right. So moving into the game on Saturday, do you have an official lineup prediction?
No, Lletget being back in makes things potentially different. That's where you can do some things. They have O'Brien also available, of course, off of his yellow card suspension. So the MVP is back.
The best player on the team is back.
Best players on the team is back. Yep. He continues to do good things. I would imagine that against LAFC, they'll probably try and play a little bit of a block and get at him with some pace. Since they have O'Brien, they have, I don't know, Kamungo. They have some ability to get forward. In transition. That's when they're their best. They're always at their best in transition. So they always want to try and LA center backs are not exactly quick. So maybe you look at some of those kind of guys up top. An O'Brien, a Kamungo. I'm not saying Bernie's going to start, but O'Brien should. Velasco will still be out there. Which formation you see will be interesting because if you're going to be if you're going to be blocking, do you want to try and have a wide shape or a more narrow shape? Does Sam Junka actually make some sense starting if you're trying to play defensive? I don't know. There's lots of weird possibilities, honestly. I'm sorry, Jose Martinez also was missing from training, so I think you have to assume he's out still too. So, Safari and Ibiaga are obvious. Farfan's obvious. Giovanni, you don't have much choice at this point, right? Carl Smith's gone. So, Facundo, Edwin, and Leggett in the midfield. Obran, Velasco, and I don't even know what up top with those guys.
And then they got to turn around 3 days later and play a July 4th night game on a Tuesday against DC United. We haven't even gotten in. We're not even far enough to think about how they manage with this smaller roster. 2 games in essentially 3 days is just brutal.
Well, the week off really helps that. You have guys that can do a little better. That's one reason why you don't want to press Leggett too far past 60 minutes, maybe, because you are going to need him pretty heavily going forward. They're going to be having the same roster problems they've had all along. You're going to need guys to play minutes. You're going to need dudes come off the bench and contribute. Or else you're not going to get any results.
Yeah.
It's just getting Leggett back, even though he looks like he's a little mentally more with it. As coach said, sometimes when you're out injured, that can really wake you up a little bit. Get your brain like, oh, I got to get back and get at it. So hopefully we'll see a good Leggett. You're still going to be missing. You're not getting Jesus back. You're not getting Jimenez back. You got Milado, but he's not really a guy so far that looks like coach trusts. You don't have a whole lot of options available without. They're still relatively banged.
It's all crappy, Buzz. The whole thing's just really crappy.
Well, it is good news. You are going to have Siki and Paxton off the bench, I think. And if they come through a 30-minute performance, then you could look at maybe having them available for you on Tuesday. So, depending on how they each go. And we saw how good both those guys have played and were playing right for the end. Siki was playing really well before he got hurt. So.
And last but not least, real quickly before we end this kit talk, they unveiled the Marvel combo mashup pre-game jerseys today, which to me were ridiculous. It's a Captain America design that is intended to camouflage the sponsor of every club in MLS.
Yeah, it ain't good.
So will you be buying one of those, Buzz?
No.
Okay.
I don't buy pregame kits to be,
Training
really.
kits, not your thing.
No, I don't training kits. I don't get pregame kits.
Okay.
I have a couple that I've collected. People have given it to me, but I've never bought one.
So is the, and Dan, maybe you know more about this, is the Marvel partnership going to result in some one-off game-worn jersey that each club gets that's bespoke to them, or is it just this training kit?
I think it's just the training kit.
Okay. All right. Very good. Dan checking in from the Arctic North.
Yes. Mike is rough.
That's hilarious.
Shouldn't laugh at him.
But I like it when it comes on that way. It sounds like we got a guy in a control room in a nuclear station. That's awesome. That's kick-ass. I love it. All right. Well, because that makes me laugh so much, this is where I'm going to tell Dan, thanks so much for participating in the show. I hope you have a fantastic holiday weekend, sir.
It's a bit cold up here.
Don't ever fix that wire, Dan. Don't ever fix that wire. That's awesome. Yeah. And Buzz, I hope you get to do something fun this weekend too. Don't blow your fingers off, okay?
I'm going to the LAFC game. That's going to be fun.
All right.
Before we say goodbye, I just wanted to give a shout out to Dylan Lacey, who was named to the MLS Next Cup Playoffs Best 11.
Oh, cool.
Which covers all age groups, so that's kind of a big deal. That's not just U19. It's all the greatest groups they have. So credit to Dylan Lacey.
And they got knocked out by the Revolution.
They did. Good run, though. All the way to semis, man. That's a good run.
Was that further along than you expected?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And, well, no. It's about what I expected, actually. But that's the second straight year they've lost in the semis to the Revolution, who are pretty good. So it's about par. There's some things I would do differently if I was running that team. But they had a really good season. I think they went through league play without losing a game, and actual league games that count. They lost one or two games along the way that were not official games.
Right.
But and they played some pretty good teams in the playoffs and did pretty well for themselves. And even against New England, they played, I thought, pretty well and had some things. If they had gotten a couple of finishes early in the game, I think it would have been a completely different game. But it was a good run. Yep. Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer90.com. Right now, shop all the latest arrivals, including the FIFA Women's World Cup gear, FC Dallas, European clubs. Grab the new Marvel FC Dallas pregame top, MLS Captain America balls. Man, they got all the good stuff for this summer. Get your kids all decked out. Third Degree listeners receive 20% off your order when you use code Third Degree at checkout. Soccer90.com. Some exclusions may apply.
All right. Well, I hope everybody has a nice, good, fun, safe July 4th weekend, because when we talk to you next, we will have not one but two Dallas matches to review and discuss. And I'm sure, I feel it in my heart, they will arrive with 6 solid points in hand. So have a great, safe holiday weekend, and we will speak to you next time on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
It's too windy to whisper.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.